Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. If you're going through a divorce, don't worry, you're not alone. This is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. Today, we're thrilled to have Sara Webb with us. Sara Webb is a heartbreak resilience coach. I want to learn more about this. Empowering lesbians and queer people to get over their ex and get back to themselves. She specializes in healing heartbreak from big breakups and devastating divorce by teaching clients to heal from within by reviving their innate power. Sara teaches pocket-sized techniques her clients can use anywhere to process stress and improve daily happiness so they can bring the best versions of themselves to their own lives. Having been engaged 3 times, divorced twice, and coming out of the closet later in life, she understands the upheaval that's possible through big life changes. She believes wholeheartedly that healing is our birthright, saying that a life of thrive is possible for everyone, regardless of their circumstances. Sara is a part-time single mom, avid yogi, and like me, a mediocre runner. She resides in sunny Florida and travels internationally for workshops and speaking engagements. So listen, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your divorce or your current station in life, please don't be. Sara's here to help us break it down so you can feel confident and prepared by creating a clearer picture of not only your financial situation, but how you can tackle some of the personal challenges that you might be facing. So grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, buckle up, and let's get you once again personally and financially empowered. Sara, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you do so much work. You do work like with probably people of all shapes, sizes, and colors and whatnot. So how did you get into this line of work? And like, tell me a little more about what you do and how you're helping people day in and day out.
I've been an educator my entire life. I have a master's degree in education and have really shifted most recently my meditation coaching business to serve my community. When I was an inspirational speaker and had published a book, my ex-wife and I got a divorce, and I shifted my meditation coaching business because I found that the techniques that I was using to heal childhood trauma as well as sexual trauma, trigger warning, I had an incident several years back that I've done a lot of work around. And I was able to use these same techniques when I was heartbroken from my first big breakup after coming out of the closet. Of course, my company works with any human who is heartbroken because heartbreak is a trauma. It's a grief.
Yeah.
The rub is that it's not the first one. We typically have traumas that occur early on in life and that we can heal by using the current trauma that's in front of us and by recognizing the patterns. Because oftentimes when we're growing up, we might see our parents handle their finances in a certain way. And then we end up repeating that with our partner or partners later on in life, whether that's a boyfriend, girlfriend, a spouse. We typically repeat these same things that have been programmed into our subconscious that we saw when growing up when it comes to finances, relationships, you name it.
How do you break those habits? I mean, like, because we see this all the time, from a financial planning perspective in my own wealth management practice, I see people that come in with, their relationship with money is not the greatest. And it takes a long time sometimes to break old habits. And then especially when we help people that are navigating the financial nuances of divorce and then have to figure out when the divorce is over with and that dust is settled, their life is going to be completely different than it was just, a few weeks prior. And a lot of them still carrying some of these bad habits. So how do you break that? How do you break those habits from in those repetitive things that just, you keep getting yourself into keep digging yourself into the same hole? Like what are some of the tips and tricks?
Money is energy, right? And we bring our preconceived notions of what energy means into every aspect of our lives, including our romantic relationships. And depending on what we saw growing up, and then also what our individual idiosyncratic personality needs are, that's going to determine how we handle our money and what we think the role of each partner should be in relation to money. In fact, finances, as I'm sure you know well, are the number one reason why people end up splitting up. And for some people, money can mean security. And for other people, it can mean freedom. Some people might have an unhealthy relationship with money because of a parent figure who abused them. And so they have a guilt associated with money somehow. And so we carry all this, let's use a strong word. This is baggage. It's emotional baggage associated with our finances that we carry into relationship. Now, when it comes to queer women, lesbians in particular, we women are more prone to nesting, or I should just say humans who have more estrogen are more prone to nesting. Humans who have more testosterone are more prone to spreading their seed. And so when you get two women together, this is why lesbian bars across the country close down. Gay men's bars stay open, right?
Okay.
You get two women together who are prone to nesting and who then activate oxytocin and lots of dopamine, serotonin that gets activated in the beginning of any relationship. And then when you have two of them together, we're just more prone to what lesbians call bringing the U-Haul. We say that on the second date, lesbians bring a U-Haul and move in. Well, you can imagine the financial implications here.
Yeah.
Initially, this could be a big boon for the couple, for the relationship, because they have two incomes. They become dinks, perhaps if they don't have children, and then they're splitting the rent. And perhaps one woman has gotten rid of most of her furniture. Then if they rushed into the relationship, a U-Haul kind of situation, this leaves both women at risk for financial instability. First of all, women make less on the dollar than men across the board almost. And so when you've got two women who have then combined finances, perhaps one of them has sold her home, as I did with my ex-wife, or has given up her lease and essentially sold all of her furniture, then you've got a situation where there might be strong emotions, perhaps infidelity, and in any case, just a cessation of the relationship that ends up with turmoil. And perhaps one woman ends up couch surfing, essentially. She's not necessarily homeless, but essentially homeless and couch surfing and trying to find some stability financially. And so it's really important for women to make sure that they've got their ducks in a row, and that if it's a marriage situation, that they're able to find the resources so that they can make sure that everything is fair and equitable, especially when emotions are high, as they are during breakups.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question, right? So you deal with all these emotions, and as you're walking me through the answer to this question, I could actually feel myself getting a little bit tense, and because I'm thinking like, if that was me, what would I be feeling? And, the couch surfing situation, and like, luckily that didn't happen to my divorce, and but I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. I have clients that I'm working with right now. I have one client right now who's living in a shelter, and so how do you manage the stress that comes along with that? I know that you do a lot of meditation, and you have, I do practice meditation. I'm not very good at it. It is definitely a practice, but tell me more about ways that we can handle those stresses that come along, because what I find is that the more stress and the more emotions that are involved, the worse financial decisions you're making in the long run. So tell me more about what we can do there.
Yes, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. When we're stressed, we are not able to think properly. In fact, fMRI studies have shown that brain activity in the prefrontal cortex, or the neocortex, where we do a lot of our processing and logical thinking, is essentially rerouted to the limbic brain whenever we're under stress. We are not really able to think properly when we're in that state of fight or flight, or as some people call the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so when we go into fight or flight, we're not able to breathe properly. We're not able to think. Sometimes we can stay in such a heightened state, especially when it comes to heartbreak, that we're really essentially not sleeping, only sleeping a few hours a night, but we're not able to get to sleep because we're in this heightened state of arousal that's fight or flight. And so, yes, meditation is a fantastic tool to utilize. I will say all of the studies are talking about regular meditation practices, not, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of a divorce, I'm going to try to start meditating. You're probably not going to be very successful. And I will also just validate what you mentioned. You said I'm not very good at meditation. I hear this a lot from clients because we do utilize meditative states in order to heal, because we were in a meditative state when we were children. And the thing with meditation is, like you said, it's a practice. It's not a performance. It's not something that's supposed to feel good or make us feel any kind of certain way. It's literally a nervous system reset. It's allowing our parasympathetic nervous system to kick on, because typically we are in sympathetic nervous system arousal from the time that we wake up, or at least by the time we have our coffee, until a couple hours before bed, if that. Some people are working right up until, and then they wonder why they can't sleep, because they've been flooded with UV light, with all these screens all day long. But the point is, when we apply meditative practices specifically to heartbreak scenarios, breakup scenarios, it allows us to calm down the nervous system enough so that we can get into that prefrontal cortex, the ability to use our logic and make better decisions. Because you are right, the financial decisions, really any decision that we make when we're in this really heightened sympathetic nervous system arousal, probably are not going to be the most prudent ones for us.
Yeah, I will share with you, and I'll share with listeners. I had an experience of a few. I ended up getting divorced in 2018, and 2020 I had a major shakeup from an employment perspective. I was the product of an unfortunate bait and switch with an employment situation, and I basically lost my job April of 2020 and started my wealth management company that same month, because my back was a little bit against the wall, and it was the first month of COVID, effectively. So very few companies were hiring at that time. So I had that experience, kind of coming off of the divorce, new employment situation, building a business from the ground up. And I was in that fight or flight scenario, basically 24 hours a day. And I ended up getting adrenal fatigue. So I have a great chiropractor here and a wellness doctor that I go to all the time here locally, and he's like, man, your adrenal glands are just firing and firing and firing, and they've reached the point where they can't slow themselves down, and I ended up with adrenal fatigue, which is a real thing. Western medicine won't acknowledge it, but Eastern medicine certainly does, and I had to get back. I couldn't even run. I was running 50 to 70 miles a week at one point to not even being able to run to the mailbox, which is a quarter of a mile away from my house, because my heart rate would just go, 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 go. And it took me about a year and a half to be able to really to rein that in, and really just, through meditation and breathing techniques and tapping and, frankly, just chilling out. And I have a friend of mine who went through the same experience, subject to from his divorce. So I'm sure there are people out there that are listening that have had similar experiences. So I guess my message here is just know you're not alone, people. right? This is a normal thing, and you need to find ways to be able to cope with it.
I feel like we should talk about these 3 levels of resilience, because what you've described is textbook as far as like these 3 levels being turned on their head. So in my opinion, the 3 levels of resilience that we have are body, breath, mind, in that order, because that's how our bodies develop in utero for the better part of a year. We learn how to breathe over like the better part of a month. We take our first breath, and then we learn how to breathe from our primary caregivers. And then our mind takes almost a decade to develop. Our subconscious develops from 0 to 7 or 8 years old until our prefrontal cortex starts to develop. And what happens with stress is our mind, which is developed last, ends up controlling our body and our breath. So that email comes across, we have that disagreement with our coworker, we are sitting in traffic. These things are not actually life-threatening, but they feel that way. And our mind is controlling the way that we breathe, the way that we sleep. Basically our adrenals are completely exhausted because of what's going on in here, because of what's going on inside of our minds. So we learn to take back control by developing somatic awareness, which of course meditation helps with, and by developing breath awareness, which of course breath work or a lot of these meditative techniques will promote that as well. But really being aware of it in our daily life so that then we can watch the mind and pay attention to the mostly subconscious thoughts that are likely disempowering, that are leading us into this situation with the divorce or with our financial difficulties. Because when we can pay attention to the patterns, the habits, a lot of the thoughts that we have, most of them, 95% of them, are the same as the day before, but they can change slowly over time. And our thoughts are just trying to keep us safe. So we can learn how to heal adrenal fatigue and heal stress by utilizing those 3 levels of resilience in that order: body, breath, and then mind. Because really, where is the mind? The mind is like the brain as well as our perception. So it's the chemical reactions as well as just our perception of what's going on. Like, is the mind really here? Like when we talk about me, we point here at our heart. We don't point at our head or even our belly. Like you would think you would just bend the elbow, press your hand toward the belly button. That would be me. But we talk about me right here in our heart space.
Yeah.
So it's about that somatic awareness so that we can really figure out how we want to think, how we want to experience life, so that we don't end up in another U-Haul situation, don't end up in another divorce situation needing your services or mine. This is about healing generational trauma so that it doesn't happen anymore, so that we don't end up marrying the same person in a different meat suit. I always say I married my dad twice. And
well,
you might hear that from your
I can see that. Luckily, I lucked out. I did not. I've since remarried and married a complete opposite person. So that a complete opposite meat suit, so to speak. I just can't stop thinking about the experience that I had, and even the experience that my friend had that was going through this. And I felt like I was. How do I describe this? Like you were like always on that verge of that panic attack. Right, like because you're just like you're vibrating so high, and there's so much stuff coming at you. So I had the employment situation. I was still dealing with the fallout of the divorce because unfortunately that situation never went away. There was there was an issue with the IRS because they weren't letting me deduct my alimony, which was totally legit. And there was a whole bunch of spinning plates and stuff going on. And I always felt like for that, probably about a good year and a half, like I was always like on that. I never did have a panic attack. I was able to bring myself back into the present moment and just, get my breath under control and just reset myself. But like I could feel myself getting there all the time. And I'm sure there are people, and it's people that are listening, they're dealing with the stress of the divorce and then trying to figure out like, how do I make it right? Like my life is going to be so different. And I think to your point, it's the fear of the unknown and your mind's going someplace where it doesn't necessarily need to be, right? It needs to be here in the present, in the now. And am I right?
The mind as well as the breath. So let me just clarify, Jamie. I heard you say that you did not have a panic attack, but have you had one in your lifetime? Do you know what that feels like?
I had one. I've probably had two in my lifetime. Yes. In my 20s.
So what I'm suggesting from what you're reporting is that you actually were on the verge of what sensationally, physically felt like a panic attack because of your breath. What's the definition of a panic attack? It's the shallow, the kind of breathing, and they put a paper bag, right? To try to get you to focus and actually breathe longer. That's the reason for the paper bag. It's also to put some carbon dioxide back into your system so that you can build up some carbon dioxide tolerance. I happen to know a lot about the breath. I won't bore you with it, but I will say that, physiologically, that's why you felt that way, because you physiologically were. When we have that momentary stressful situation come up in our field, we immediately start breathing from the top portion of our chest so that we're preparing our body to fight or flee. Now, that's going to conserve energy in a very smart way if we really need to fight or flee. Yeah. But when we're in a constant state of stress, then we're not able to breathe, and then we're not able to think. And so what I would suggest to anyone out there who's resonating with what Jamie's talking about, learn how to activate your diaphragmatic breathing so that you can, if you look at like human anatomy and the rib cage, that's the possibility of our lungs. That's how much it can possibly fill up. But typically we're only breathing from this chest portion, especially when we're under stress. And so a lot of the techniques and tools that my courses teach are to learn how to loosen the belly and allow the diaphragm to completely contract and fill the lungs so that then we can think about how we're actually responding. That's half the battle. So it sounds like maybe some tools like that would be appropriate for anyone who's experiencing that kind of pain. Yeah.
Are there any other tools that you would recommend? I have one, but I want to ask you first because it's, this is your show, but any other tools you can think of that would be important for people to, I guess whether they're physical tools or emotional tools or, tools like you using you as a resource, people like you as a resource in their lives, like anything else you can think of?
One of my biggest secrets to grab your meditative time is to use the car when you're not driving it, but to use the car like before you leave work. Like, hey, I'm on my way home. You have a few minutes just to like close your eyes. You can, for example, I'm going to go get some groceries. You can go pull a few blocks away, take 5 minutes to yourself, then go get the groceries, then come back, steal away these little moments where you can close your eyes, let the nervous system calm down, say some positive things to yourself, and then move on so that you're honoring yourself. When we take these little moments for ourselves, it's a signal to our little baby, our little kid within that we're important, especially as people pleasers. A lot of women that I work with are people pleasers. We are taught by society, intrinsically, extrinsically, especially for somebody like me who's from the Bible Belt, who's from the South, we're taught to people please. And so when we start honoring ourselves and giving those little moments to ourselves, that really builds a lot of self-trust. And this is the beginning of self-compassion. When we can trust ourselves, then we can actually be compassionate with ourselves. When we can be compassionate with ourselves, then we can love ourselves. When we can love ourselves, we can love other people. So it all starts with the way that we're treating ourselves.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? You have to have some grace. for yourself. I tell people all the time, and
Absolutely.
we meet with a lot of folks every week that are exploring their options and meeting with us to decide if they want to work with us or not. And many of them are just beating themselves up for the situation they're in, their financial dire straits or whatever it is. And I have to just keep reminding them, first off, you have to give yourself some grace and recognize that, you went into this with the information that you had at that point and the facts that were available, and you made a decision, and you can't really beat yourself up over that, even though that's something I do myself. So I have to continue to remind myself about it. And my wife does a pretty good job of reminding me of it as well, that I have to give myself some grace, but it's important.
It is absolutely crucial. I so agree.
My tool is this watch. I don't know if most of these people are going to be listening to this. They're not going to see the video, but mine is, I bought myself a Garmin, for not only to help me obviously with running, but, just to monitor my heart rate throughout the course of the day. If I felt that I was, my heart rate was going and I was starting to get a little bit anxious or whatever, I was like, all right, hey, I need a 5-minute break. So have a nice little comfy chair in my office right here, 5-minute break, settle down a little bit, and get back after it. And it's been a game changer for me, but, and you don't always have to go out and spend $200 on a tool like that to be able to get through this either. Breathing and learning how to breathe the right way. And it is certainly a free tool that you can add to your toolbox there.
Absolutely.
So last question that I have for you is, talk to me a little bit more about, if people reach out to you, they reach out to you and they want to get some help, navigating their financial situation, their divorce, their own personal lives, not even if they're not even going through a divorce. What does the experience look like if somebody, how do they get in touch with you? But what does that experience look like? Can you walk through that?
Absolutely. It's very situation specific. You can find me everywhere at Sarah Webb Says. That's SarawebBsays. So I've got a website. We have a YouTube channel. We have a fantastic free group on Facebook called Queer Hearts Break Harder. That's the name of my forthcoming second book. It will be called Queer Hearts Break Harder. That's the name of my forthcoming podcast, Queer Hearts Break Harder. And we have about 2,300 women who are a member of that Facebook group. And, they're in the throes of heartbreak, and it's a space to share and grow. We have live free events on Friday nights, because Friday nights are tough when you're going through heartbreak. And I have a webinar that people can access. You can put it in the show notes. They can also just go to my website, sarawebsays.com, and watch a free 15-minute webinar that gives a little bit of information about me and my story. And at the end of that webinar, they can book a consultation with me, and I can direct them to one of our many programs. We run group programs of many different kinds, focused toward attachment, focused toward healing, focused toward meditation. I also do work one-on-one with a select few clients. So lots of opportunity to interact. I do custom meditations, and like I said, hold group meditations as well. So
Love it. Thank you so much for gleaning all of your insights. And I took so much information from you, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the important work you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate it. So thank you, listeners, for joining us today. And again, a special thanks to Sarah for sharing such valuable insights. For those of you that are looking to explore more about the emotional resilience and financial empowerment, again, don't hesitate to reach out to Sarah by visiting her website at sarawebsays.com. And if you're navigating your own financial challenges, especially before or while navigating divorce, remember that support from us is just a click away at allegiantds.com, where you can book a complimentary and confidential, most importantly, consultation with us. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations like this. And until next time, keep nurturing your inner strength and building a stable and prosperous future for yourself and your loved ones.